Sales doesn't need to be hard or overcomplicated. That's not my way of saying that sales is easy. Rather, I'm saying that you can have a successful career in sales if you develop a process and execute on it consistently. This channel is dedicated to what a sales process framework could look like and showcasing the different best and worst practices around the different steps of a sales process. The intention is to publish short, weekly videos that are easily digestible with clear action items that you can begin doing today. Welcome to Sunday Sales Staples. Today's topic revolves around outbound prospecting, which is the act of reaching out to potential customers to convert them to active customers. And today we're going to be talking about how to prospect using the power of social media. Now, you may have heard people talk about social media and say, social media is a waste of time. You shouldn't spend your entire day scrolling through your phone, or these apps provide no value to your daily life. And while I do agree that you shouldn't spend your entire day scrolling through your phone, I disagree that these social apps provide no value. Nearly 50% of the world's population has some sort of social media, and you need to be ahead of the curve when it comes to utilizing the different platforms at your disposal. In a recent study published by LinkedIn, sales professionals that added social platforms to their outbound prospecting motion closed 51% more deals than their peers. If you could close more business by social selling, then it should be a no-brainer. Now, before we get into the best and worst practices, I want to share a story. In a previous video, I talked about an account executive named Thomas. I will probably be bringing him up frequently in different videos because he was one of my biggest challenges, and I learned a lot about how to mentor and coach other account executives. Now, Thomas was a skilled sales professional and had some great experience in transactional sales. However, when he made the transition to complex inside sales, his sales process was not producing the results we wanted. Thomas believed that the only touch points with prospects should be through cold calls and emails, and he couldn't be convinced otherwise. While these outlets are vital to an outbound prospecting motion, they aren't enough in today's environment. I started working with a cohort of other account executives from Thomas's company on social selling, and we put together a robust plan to not only utilize cold calls and emails, but also to leverage the different platforms out there. We started with LinkedIn, we moved to Facebook, then to Instagram, and we even started doing some homework on these companies through Yelp to help gather more information. Within weeks, the cohort utilizing social selling began generating more leads and growing their pipeline, which ultimately led to more ARR. Thomas's, however, remained stagnant. In this social selling experiment, there was even a story about how one of the account executives couldn't reach a well-known startup founder who had multiple businesses. Clearly, this founder was extremely busy, and the AE's cold calls and emails fell flat. They just couldn't get a hold of this founder. Finally, they noticed that this founder was posting multiple times per day on Instagram, so the AE decided to shoot them a DM. Within 2 hours, the AE got a response and scheduled a meeting with the founder for later that week. If I remember correctly, the founder's business didn't qualify for the service. However, the fact of the matter is that the AE got in touch with their decision maker, quickly disqualified them from the sales process, and was able to move on to other prospects by removing this one from their list. With prospects being bombarded with calls and drowning in emails, sales professionals need to stand out in the white noise. Now let's review the best and the worst practices for social selling. The first piece of advice for social selling is to utilize multiple outlets because you need to meet your prospects where they are. Are they constantly posting on LinkedIn or commenting underneath other people's posts? Shoot them a message. Does the prospect have a large following on Instagram or Twitter? Start following them so you can get a sense of their interests and ideas. The point is to not put all of your social eggs in one basket and don't rely on just one platform. Next up is branding. It's a best practice to have the same profile picture on all of your social outlets, and this isn't a requirement. However, it does allow people to easily recognize you no matter which platform you're using. You also need to stay positive. Complaining and arguing on social media isn't a good look, and people will be turned off by the negativity. Keep things lighthearted. Next up, if you're going to be posting articles to your social outlets, then keep the information relevant. Don't post your company's blog posts or news articles from 3 years ago. Rather, work with your marketing team on a repository of new assets that can be shared on a frequent basis. Another important best practice is time blocking. We've all put ourselves in the situation where we open a social app, start scrolling for a few posts, and then all of a sudden 60 minutes has passed. If you're going to be using social platforms to prospect, set a time block for yourself. Maybe it's 15 minutes right before lunch or 30 minutes at the end of the day. Now, this does require self-management, but with enough practice, you'll be fine. Lastly, make sure to share market sentiments with the rest of your teams and organization. Are you seeing trends from specific roles of decision makers? Are industry professionals experiencing the same pain point? Take note of these trends and share with others. Not only will other sales team members appreciate this information, but marketing and product teams could benefit from these sentiments as it could change the way they message value propositions or decide which features to add to the service. Now that we've reviewed the best practices, let's jump into the worst practices. When it comes to worst practices, this is going to be a fairly straightforward section because there's only 3 worst practices. The first is not having a social media presence at all. If you're a ghost to the world of social media, then it's going to put you at a disadvantage when it comes to outbound prospecting. The next is distractions. Like I mentioned in the previous section, people can get carried away with their social media scrolling, so make sure to set a time block for yourself and stay on track. You'll have plenty of time to check your socials later in the day. And lastly, don't be negative. I covered being positive in the last section, but I did want to reinforce it here because I have seen it multiple times where AEs get into arguments or complain on social media, and it hurts their chances of winning new business. Don't be a negative Nancy, be a positive Polly, and I have no idea if people use the term positive Polly, but let's roll with it. That wraps up this week's quick overview of social selling, and I appreciate you checking out the video. If you want to dig deeper into social selling, I highly recommend checking out some articles that you can easily find on Google. Some people will have similar ideas to mine, and others will differ. At the end of the day, it's up to you to craft your own social selling strategy, but I hope there were some key takeaways that you can begin using today. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, sales doesn't need to be hard. While sales is becoming vastly more complex with metrics and data, your process doesn't need to be so convoluted that it isn't easily replicated. Keep coming back to the channel to learn more about how to simplify your process and win new business. And feel free to email me at sundaysalesstaples@gmail.com or reach out on Instagram at sundaysalesstaples. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll catch you next week.